Hello viewers, I'm Lt-Col and you are watching Inside Scoop, where we bring you prominent South Asian celebrities, personalities to bring forth the very need for South Asian voices here in the US. On the show today, I have the honor and privilege of having someone I call as a dear friend and I call as a pioneer when we talk about Sikh American voices, especially when it comes to their representation in the US Army and the entire US military. On the show today, we have with us Lt-Col Kamal Kalsi, a huge face for recognition of religious articles of faith and their tolerance in the US Army. Today on the show, I bring him to talk to us about what it truly means to be a South Asian American and to be a Sikh American in the year 2018 as we are wrapping up this year, and also bring forth what is exactly happening about the Sikh identity in the US military. So, on the show today, let's welcome Kamal. Thank you so much for being with us, Lt-Col.
Thank you, Aditi. It's an honor to be here and always a pleasure seeing you.
Yes, it's amazing to have you basically with me once a year or twice a year to discuss so many prevalent issues as we go into talking about a political dialogue and more on Sikh American representations.
Sure.
One of the biggest reasons, we on ITV Gold or in general like to talk about Sikh American voices is on the apparent issue that, when you look at the South Asian communities, there are two faiths that are continuously being either targeted or discriminated against. And that has been increasing in the last couple of years. And, those two faiths are Sikhism and, Islam.
Sure.
So when talking about, identity issues and the Sikh identity, I sort of wanted to start off this interview on this one article I found with the Sikh Coalition, a great partner of ours as well, and Lt-Col Kamal Kalsi's. They make this statement which says, the US military, the nation's largest employer, continues to discriminate against Sikh Americans who wear turbans and maintain hair and beards. Most Americans who want to serve in our nation's military sign up for boot camp and are allowed to rise or fall on their own merits. However, with the exceptions of the US Army, the military still bans Sikhs from serving with turbans, unshorn hair, and unshorn beards. These discriminatory policies ignore the fact that Sikhs are able to meet safety and operational requirements in the US Army and militaries throughout the world while maintaining their articles of faith.
Right.
A huge statement that was made by Sikh Coalition and a huge statement that sort of put you also in the forefront. What's your comment on what they had said and your struggle with that whole process?
Yeah, it's interesting. First you brought about the fact that yes, Sikhs are certainly being targeted as well as our Muslim brothers and sisters.
Right.
But it's not just us. If you look a little more carefully at hate crimes and hate violence,
right,
and even bullying events that have happened over the course of the past 10 years, it's almost every minority community that has been affected. So if you in fact reach out to African Americans or Latinos and Hispanics, they will tell you that they've also seen a rise in hatred and or hate crimes against their particular communities.
Right.
And the Indian community in general, to include Hindus and Buddhists and Christians, I think also have felt the echoes of 9/11, this divisive rhetoric that we've seen in our political sphere
right,
has affected all of us. All of our minority communities.
So just talking more on that and reflecting upon what we were talking about, the need of Sikhs in the military. You were successful in bringing religious articles of faith into the US Army, in which you're able to practice your faith and also serve the nation's largest employer and one of the biggest, strengths of our country. When you're looking at that same struggle that you're having with other branches of the military, why is it so important for those articles of faith to be accepted, according to you, in those branches?
It's important for a lot of reasons. Religious freedom is a core American value. When we think of the first settlers that came to our nation, came here to the shores of the United States, they were looking for religious freedom. And if we don't uphold that value, it may not become a part of us. So it's important to me that, like you said, the nation's largest employer
right,
also preserves religious freedom. that in the United States Army and other branches of the military, that we allow veterans the same religious freedoms that we offer in, in other institutions.
Right.
If we allow our inmates, for example, and our prisoners of war religious freedom, why shouldn't our soldiers be afforded those same freedoms?
Do you also think that this, when you look at, for example, if the entire US military, all the branches, were to accept the religious articles of faith of Sikhism, do you think that would sort of set a statement of a stronger identity and acceptance perhaps? Do you think, like, when you see a huge change on such a national level when the US Army accepted it, do you think it really sets a very good tone for the community in its entirety when you talk about identity?
Oh yeah, yeah, and we've seen it already. Here in New York City, for example, you have NYPD that has looked at our example in the Army and said, okay, we're going to allow Sikhs in the NYPD. And so now you have this beautiful growing Sikh Officer Association. Another sort of unintended consequence has been is that Muslims that wear hijabs are also now allowed in a variety of career spaces. So most recently, the Air Force allowed a young Lieutenant USA to start serving in the Air Force with her hijab.
Wow.
And so when I spoke with her, she said, Colonel Kalsi, it's because of your example that we were able to get the accommodation for her in the Air Force, and that made me really emotional. That made me so proud because we've worked on this for now over 10 years. Right. And I never intended for this to become such a big fight. Yeah. But I think it's grown in significance and importance because the community supports it, and there is such a huge impact when an institution like the military says, okay, we will honor your religious articles of faith. We will honor the more than 80,000 Sikh soldiers that died serving in the world wars by allowing you guys religious freedom. I think that speaks volumes about the U.S. Army, that they are such a progressive crew that they would allow these articles of faith.
Yes, and I definitely agree with you. I think since that change has happened, it definitely has opened the ways to so many more things. I would definitely recommend a lot of our viewers to look this up and really look into what's happening with Sikhs in the U.S. Army. You had just hinted at the U.S. Air Force, and you just discussed this little, incident that happened with you where someone, reached out to you about wearing their hijab and that being allowed. However, you're also currently working towards getting religious articles of faith, especially for Sikhism, approved in the U.S. Air Force. I would really love for you to discuss whatever you're allowed to discuss on air with our viewers about exactly what's happening, because that's its own process of its own, if I'm understanding right. So even though you were able to get the same approved with the U.S. Army, what I'm understanding is you have to redo the process and reappeal and sort of get those masters again involved in it. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, it's very, policy change is very complicated work. There's no sort of set map which you can go about and say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then suddenly the Air Force will allow Sikhs to serve. It's sort of a chaotic process. And so we've started those conversations with actually all branches of the military as well as the U.S. Public Health Service to allow not just Sikhs, but all religious minorities to serve. And so we're getting close, and especially with the U.S. Air Force, we've made a huge amount of progress, and we're hoping that in the next few months we'll have some exciting news. But beyond that, I can't really share details of what's going on. But
so far, what has been some of the steps that you've taken, even with the Sikh American Veterans Alliance that you have founded that's working with you? We would like for our viewers to know exactly, you know, the kind of work that goes into it, and also perhaps how can us, as just Indian Americans or our viewers, could sort of help promote that message as well?
Yeah, so we founded the Sikh American Veterans Alliance, SEVA, a couple years back. It's not a religious organization, you know. Even though it's a Sikh nonprofit, we are really more of a veteran service organization, not really a religious organization. And we really do need the community's help and support. Just this past year, actually this past summer, we did an amazing film festival with the support of Sikh Lens and Dodge School of Film. Very successful. Huge shout out to Mayor Ravi Balla from Hoboken.
Yes.
The film festival was in Hoboken at Stevens Institute of Technology, and it was a huge success. We filled the seats. People loved the short films about Sikhs and Sikh stories. We had a number of Sikh military movies.
Yeah.
And so we need the community's support at these events. Occasionally we need their help in petitions and letters,
right.
stuff like that. We will be partnering with Sikhs of America to do a number of events next year, including the July 4th parade held in DC every year.
Yeah, a huge one.
Huge.
That's a huge one. That's one of the biggest representations of Sikh Americans every year. If you are in DC, do have a look at it. Maybe we'll see Lieutenant Colonel there as well.
Absolutely. But yeah, we do events and we do political engagement. We we spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill working on these issues of opening doors for Sikhs and other minorities in the military.
You know, while we are discussing a lot about your journey and about what exactly is happening about the Sikh American identity in the US military, I reached out to some of my advocate friends and some of our viewers of ITV Gold, and we had a few questions that some of these viewers had for you regarding, you know, your journey and regarding exactly what's happening for Sikh American identities. I would definitely like to ask you this question, which sort of caught me by surprise, if you allow me.
Please.
So the person's question is, you joined the Army in 2001, correct?
Correct.
Was this a response for the 9/11 attacks, or did you enlist prior into that time? They want to know, do you consider being an Army representative of the Sikh in the US? Do you think when you brought yourself to the surface, it sort of really opened up those arms? So what's your response to that?
So I joined in January 2001, so it was like 8 months before 9/11 happened. It was... And my dad was working in the NYPD when 9/11 sort of transpired, and so we couldn't find him for hours. We couldn't locate him because all the cell towers were down and communications came to a grinding halt. But so in the aftermath of 9/11, it just cemented my desire to serve even more, because I wanted to be able to not just represent our country, but I wanted to help represent our Sikh diaspora, you know, the Sikh nation,
right?
And help open doors for our minorities as well.
They had another follow-up question to that. They're asking you to comment on the anti-Brown rhetoric that was perpetuated during that time. And was it difficult for you to serve, did you feel any kind of hesitance around that time because, you know, the community was being attacked wrongfully?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think it's wrong to attack any community in response to what, you know, may have transpired anywhere. It's wrong to paint any community with a broad brush and discriminate. So we've sort of, I've never said, you know, I'm not a Muslim, because that's antithetical to what we stand for. It's better to say, look, We don't believe it's appropriate. We don't believe it's proper to hate anybody. So I think that's the more mature response to people that would try to, that are biased against us, or those that are discriminatory towards us. Now, I've never felt those sentiments from amongst my Army peers. You know, my fellow soldiers have never given me a hard time about the turban. In fact, when we deployed to Afghanistan in 2011, one of my dear friends, he's like, look, he's like, dude, I don't even see the turban anymore. You know, he's like, all I see is the American flag on your shoulder. All I see is the uniform. And that's true. You know, when you're part of a unit, everything else just sort of becomes noise. It just sort of blends into the background. Nobody cared that I had a turban and beard.
Right.
They want to know that I'm a good doctor and that I could take care of our fellow soldiers, and we did that. We did that very well. And so I think the soldiers that I served with really left with a good experience about Sikhs, and they sort of understand us a lot better. I've been fortunate enough to be in commands that understand diversity. So it's been very, very nice.
How would you sort of place the role, and if I was to use the word the status in a nice way, of Sikh Americans in the military over the years, with what you have seen post 9/11, with what you've seen in the increase of awareness, hatred, everything all together? What is your current take on it?
I think our role and status is growing, and I continue to see that that trend. We have over 50 Sikhs serving currently in the U.S. Army with turban and gais. You know, there are hundreds more that are females, ones that don't keep their gais. So, you know, I think it's important for Sikhs to serve and other minorities because it makes us a stronger and more diverse military. The military should reflect the people that it serves. You know, if you need a Urdu or a Punjabi speaking soldier,
right?
You know, we're the ones. You know, or you need somebody that speaks Hindi. You know, who are you going to reach out to? You're going to reach out to your population that has a connection, that has that sort of cultural competence. So we bring and we offer a lot to the military, not just our linguistic skills and our cultural competence, but also because we're such good hard workers. People recognize that. You know, if you look at Sikhs in any industry, media, trucking, medicine,
of course.
business, you know, we all work very, very hard. That's why you'll never see a Sikh, you know, begging for money. You know, we pride ourselves on working hard.
Yes, I was having a discussion with our common dear friends of Sikh Coalition once, and someone once made a statement to me that I would never forget. They would say that it's time that we as a huge community realize that Sikh Americans are a very important and a very needed part of the community, because we are a thriving part that is economically also producing so much more, and at the same time the resilience and the strength that's taught by the Sikh identity and the Sikh faith and the culture is what makes them, you know, stand up even more. So it's about time that we realize that we're this melting pot that's coming together. What's your response to that?
I think it's great. It's absolutely right. If you look at our, you'll see that a lot more political campaigns are starting to reach out to Indian Americans in general.
Right.
And that's because they finally understand that Indian Americans, generally speaking, are very, very successful people. We have money, right? And that's also very true of the Sikh community. You know, our per capita income in the United States is very, very high.
Yes.
So, you know, I think it's important now for us to start to stand up in institutions like the military, like the intelligence community. We need Sikhs in the FBI and the CIA, in police, and similar industries, and then that becomes a stepping stone to power. You know, we want Sikhs to be able to serve in Congress. We want a Sikh senator someday.
Yes.
And then maybe even the presidency. You know, I think the day will come when we will have somebody in the White House that's a Sikh. You know, we have in Canada, to our neighbors up north, we have lots of Sikhs that are politically active and are serving in their parliament and as a Secretary of Defense.
Of course, yes.
I think Sikhs will get there here as well. It's just a matter of time.
I would like to go back to some of the questions that we were sent about you and address a couple more. One of them actually is, you know, continuing to talk more about Sikhs serving and, you know, having that respect. The person asked, what is a piece of advice you would give to fellow South Asian men and women serving in the U.S. Armed Forces, especially the women, either currently or now that they're back home as veterans?
I would say to my, you know, fellow brothers and sisters that serve to just keep serving, to keep finding and looking for avenues to serve. Even though, you know, you may not be on active duty, you may not be involved in a firefight somewhere, there's a lot of stuff to do here at home. We have lots of homeless veterans. I know just a couple of months back, one of my friends who runs I think a gas station or a convenience shop said he had a veteran come to him, whose wife was in the nursing home, and he had served in Vietnam. He was a Purple Heart recipient, but he no longer had a home, and so we at Seva got in touch with veteran service organizations here in New Jersey, and we got him plugged in, and so he's done well. He's now at least off the streets. But there's so many opportunities like that to make a difference in people's lives here. You know, you could go to your local hospital, volunteer there. Your local public schools also need help. There's always an opportunity to help make your community better and stronger.
As well. Yeah. Lieutenant Colonel, I have to ask you this question. When you look at your journey, when you look at, you know, serving now in the U.S. Armed Reserves, also working and getting that acceptance for your own articles of faith in the Army now, you know, battling that, combating that with other branches, is policy work going to be a huge focus for your future when you are looking to, you know, still stay in the U.S. military and serve in whatever capacity and still also serve in your medical career? What is your take on policy work?
So policy work is slow, it's hard, it's complicated. Very
complicated.
And it's fun. You know, so none of the money that we raise for Seva comes to me. You know, I work for free. It all goes to our programs. But you know, meeting with decision makers and politicians and people in the Pentagon to help affect change with their policy, I think it's an important part of being an American citizen, an important part of service as an American. You need to be able to engage in this type of work.
Right.
So I will continue to do it as long as I can. You know, I'm lucky. I'm a doctor, so I have a profession where I could work, you know, a little bit and then spend the rest of my time doing this stuff, which I love. You know, other people may not necessarily have that freedom. So I think it's important for those of us that do have the opportunity and the availability to do it, to actually do it.
You know, we are coming to an end of our interview, but I had a question and a follow-up question also sent by one of our viewers. So I think it'd be a great, you know, way for us to end this interview. The question is, you are a doctor, a lieutenant colonel in the US Army, a husband, a son, and much more. How do you relax with all of that on your plate? And also, a different question, which has nothing to do with this, is 2019 is going to be very important for political dialogue and presentation. And with a new Congress, which is more democratic friendly, that's coming into power, how do you think we as South Asians should mobilize? So you can answer either of our questions in your
questions.
way.
Great questions. What do I do to relax?
Yes.
I hang out with my family. I play with my kids. We have two wonderful little kids, and so they keep us busy. They love the beach and the pool. So I like spending time with family, and that's relaxing. I like working out too and running. So if you guys ever need a running partner, come by New Jersey. But you're absolutely right in that this is an important moment in political history,
right.
Especially for minorities. We've seen a surge of minorities enter these political races, and I think it's important for us as a Sikh community, as a Southeast Asian community, to support these minority candidates. Go out and just meet the candidates, ask them the tough questions. What do you feel about Sikhs serving in the military? What do you feel about whatever your issues are, the environment, or whatever issues you are, that are important to you. I think it's important for us to finally start coming out of the gurdwaras and the mandirs and our mosques, to come out and start to engage politically and start to lift our community that way. Because if you're not there, right. if your voice is not there, they won't pay attention to you or your issues. So support political candidates, and that you can do that in a variety of ways. But it's important to be a part of the dialogue.
You have been a huge inspiration for a lot of young Sikh Americans, and I could also say a lot of young Punjabi Americans that are here. We have had our friends from Sikhs of America, Sikhs of New York, Sikh Coalition speak so highly about you. A lot of young population. What's a piece of advice you'd give to the young and thriving Sikh American population and the young and thriving Punjabi American population?
Yeah, I see our diaspora as one. I don't see a difference. Even to say that I think it's really, really important for us to be more inclusive, even within our own community.
Right.
And so I love working alongside our Muslim and Hindu, Christian and Jewish brothers and sisters. I think it's great to do that, and I think we need to do more of that. We need to do more interfaith work. We need to start to, again, go outside of, we need to start stepping outside of the Gurdwara and engaging with our American neighbors, with the rest of our community. Only then will there be a better understanding. We don't need commercials per se to sort of tell people who we are.
Right.
We just need to be better advocates ourselves. We need to stand up for ourselves when somebody says no. So we always joke about it, but a great way to get a Sikh to do something is to tell them not to do it, because you can't tell us what not to do. So we need to engage in those fights when we feel like we're being discriminated against or being oppressed. We need to engage with our nonprofits and the Sikh institutions that are working towards those goals, and we need to engage politically. That's a given.
Well, thank you so much for being with us on ITV Gold on Inside Scoop. I hope people enjoyed this amazing political conversation, this dialogue that we had. Any last-minute messages for all our ITV Gold viewers?
Yeah, please come out and support our events. We'll be having this amazing Punjabi Food and Film Festival in August next year in Hoboken, New Jersey. And then in February, we're going to be doing an amazing Sikh Heritage Night with the New Jersey Devils. So please come support our events.
Well, thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, that was none other than Lt-Col Kamal Kalsi, a great voice for representation for Sikh Americans in the US military. Stay with us as we continue to follow up on this story, and do send us your recommendations on events@itvgold.com if you have these voices for us to showcase to you. Again, a great day and a great event and a great interview. Stay with us on ITV Gold as we bring you so much more. I'm Lt Lamba signing off.